Hello, BookTube and AuthorTube. This is Writing Wednesday, the road to NaNoWriMo. I have to admit, I'm a bit lost. So the project I've been working on, I don't know if I'm going to continue with it. So for the past month and some video, I've been working on a project inspired by my antipathy, my antipathy towards my hometown. I had three options I wanted to go. Either a realistic novel or general fiction, a contemporary fantasy or realistic fantasy, or a secondary fantasy that would be more steampunk or dieselpunk. But over the past week or so, I'm not honestly passionate about any of them. As far as the realistic novel, the general fiction, I have an idea, a setting, a theme, characters, but I have no idea what the plot is. None at all. And I think fundamentally, I really have to question myself when I do want to write general fiction. I do sometimes have this desire. Because, I do get these yearnings to read general fiction, or write general fiction. But, with reading general fiction, normally what I do is I'll go to the library, or I've been recently buying very cheap used books from a Libris. I buy a huge amount of them. And then read them, and then promptly bailing on them. Because I don't actually really like them all that much. And I think a lot of this has to do with peer pressure. General fiction or literary fiction for the, higher quality stuff, is the most well-respected form of literature. It's the stuff that's taught in school. It's the canonical stuff. It's the stuff that, the people who are in the know, the people who have cultural cachet talk about and are interested in. And while genre fiction, detective fiction, romance, science fiction, and fantasy, the various permutations of thriller and everybody else are rising in cultural cachet and popularity and the ability to think and talk about critically. It's still very much general fiction as literary fiction that still dominates. There's still a stigma attached to lovers or near exclusive lovers of genre fiction. And I've wondered over the past few days if kind of that stigma isn't really causing my occasional bouts of wanting to read general fiction. Because it's not like I'm necessarily enjoying it when I do get around to reading them. And I wonder if this is not necessarily the same with my occasional desire to write general fiction as a novel. This project, for example. I have wanted to write a few general fiction pieces, particularly when I was younger, and this sort of stigma was far more pronounced. I did a he took a few creative writing courses in college, and one of the projects I did, I did not do science fiction or fantasy, even though typically when my mind tends to go an idea to science fiction and fantasy, it was a more realistic work. And while I enjoyed writing it stylistically, it had no plot. Might have had character development, but it's like, yeah. I mean, I was playing around with perspective and tense than I was like any sort of character or plot. So, and then there was several writers, classmates of mine, who actually did write science fiction or fantasy stories. One that I thought was extremely good. And there was stigma there too. So yeah, so I need to really sort of challenge myself when I want to read or write general fiction, because is it necessarily something I want to do, or is it something I'm feeling pressured to do? Moving on to the contemporary fantasy, I mean, I do have a pretty good idea of where I want to go with the story, but I don't think I have enough to really get to 50,000 words, and I don't think I'm going to enjoy writing the story for 2,000 words a day. I mean, I could be wrong. It could be a hoot. But I'm not sure. And that's what's got me worried about continuing on with that project at the moment. Because last year, I got about 25,000 words, and I finished. And I would like to actually hit 50,000 words on a project. And I don't see this project really getting that far. So the steampunk version of this idea, I don't have enough here. I have some ideas, but I don't have enough research. I don't have enough ideas to where I know where I want to go with this, particularly a month out. Because it does take me a lot more time to plan and think of world building and generate ideas and stuff. I can't just blitz it out. So where does that leave me? I mean, while I've been working on the various forms of this idea, I have been occasionally looking back to a few of my other ideas that are a little bit further along in readiness. Scorpius, the Fates of Chaos, both ideas I've kind of toyed with trying to write them as comics, because I think in a way they might benefit more from that format. And in general, I would like to write a series, but not necessarily as a huge novel. I'm much more comfortable, I think, with reading very long series as comics and as single novels. But that said, I do think I've come up with a way to where I could combine the two, Scorpius and the Fates of Chaos, and make it into a novel. And having done some work on it, I think I'm going to have a blast. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the general plot of the Fates of Chaos, particularly the plot of Part 1, and throw in some elements that I've gleaned from or that I've come up with for Scorpius to sort of enrich it. And kind of combine sort of the ideas I have for both settings, which I won't talk about here, maybe in a world building video. But I think instead of using sort of generated names, which is one thing about secondary world building, particularly when you're using sort of constructed languages and constructed names, that's not terribly appealing, is really trying to create the names for hundreds or thousands of characters. It's not very pleasant. And it's one thing that I do struggle with. And trying to create more characters for the Fates of Chaos, I'm running up against a wall of trying to create so many characters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the character names with some alterations, some additions from Scorpius and other projects, and sort of port them over to the Fates of Chaos and see how everything goes. And I've done a little bit of that over the past few days, and I'm actually really excited for what I've got. I mean, it's going to be, I think, a blast to write. Once I get everything settled, the character sort of sorted out, outline, plotted, I think I'm going to really, really enjoy this. I mean, we'll see, though. I mean, obviously, a lot of that is going to be seen as I continue to work on the project, whether I get tired of it, frustrated, because that is one problem I do have, is I have so many ideas that I want to get to, that I want to work on, that I often neglect to follow through on current projects to chase after projects that I think at the time are going to maintain my interest a little bit more than what I'm currently working on. Excuse me, just had lunch. And I don't know whether I should try to work on multiple projects at once to try to keep things fresh, or just focus on one project at a time and try to maintain that. I don't know. But I'll probably keep you informed of how the new Fates of Chaos is going to turn out, and I'll continue working here and there a bit on the... I never even gave any of them a title, good lord. Whatever I kind of decide to work on eventually, or whatever titles they get eventually. And so yeah, so that's all I've got today for the road to NaNoWriMo. Hopefully next week I'll have a bit more to report, especially on the new Fates of Chaos. I'll probably have a video up tomorrow, maybe a tag or something, or if there's any sort of like discussion rising up in the comments, I might do sort of a follow-up video on anything. And then of course on Friday there will be a weekly read. So until tomorrow, BookTube, thank you. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe. And if you're American, register to vote if you haven't already. Thank you.